From myth-shrouded origins and imperial dynasties to samurai warfare, isolation, industrial revolution, and global conflict, Japan's history spans thousands of years of resilience, transformation, and reinvention. This is the sweeping story of a unique civilization that has continually shaped and reshaped itself while leaving an indelible mark on the world. Jōmon period, circa 14,000 BCE, 300 BCE. The Jōmon period is one of the longest prehistoric eras in human history, spanning roughly 13,000 years and covering the vast expanse of Japan's initial cultural formation. The name Jōmon itself means cord-marked, referring to the distinctive decorative style found on the pottery of this time, one of the earliest known ceramics in the world. Environment and geography. Emerging at the end of the last ice age, the Japanese archipelago underwent massive geological and climatic changes. Rising sea levels separated Japan from the Asian continent, creating an isolated island environment. Dense forests, rich rivers, and abundant coastal resources defined the landscape. The climate was temperate, with warm summers and cold winters, supporting diverse flora and fauna. This setting allowed the Jōmon people to adapt a complex hunter-gatherer lifestyle centered on the seasonal availability of resources. Subsistence and lifestyle. Unlike many prehistoric peoples who depended primarily on agriculture, the Jōmon population thrived through a sophisticated system of hunting, fishing, and gathering. They exploited the rich marine environment, harvesting shellfish, fish, and sea mammals from coastal waters. Inland, they hunted deer, boar, and small game, and gathered nuts, roots, and wild plants. Evidence from archaeological sites indicates seasonal mobility. Groups moved between fixed campsites, exploiting specific resources as they became available throughout the year. This semi-sedentary lifestyle was supported by the development of permanent or semi-permanent pit dwellings, often circular or oval, built into the ground to provide shelter from the elements. Pottery and material culture. One of the defining hallmarks of the Jōmon culture is its pottery. The earliest vessels date back to around 14,000 BCE, making Jōmon pottery among the oldest in the world. These pots were hand-built using coil techniques and decorated with patterns created by pressing cords or ropes into the wet clay, hence the cord-marked name. Over time, pottery styles became increasingly elaborate and diverse, including flamboyant flame-style vessels with large, protruding rims and complex motifs. Pottery was likely used for cooking, storage, and ritual purposes, representing a significant technological advance in food preparation and preservation. In addition to ceramics, the Jōmon people crafted tools from bone, stone, and wood. Polished stone axes, arrowheads, and fish hooks have been found at numerous sites, demonstrating a wide range of hunting and fishing technologies. Social organization and settlements. While exact social structures remain debated, archaeological evidence suggests the emergence of complex communities during the Jōmon period. Large village sites, such as Sanai Maruyama in northern Honshu, reveal settlements with dozens of pit houses, storage pits, and communal spaces. The presence of specialized craft production, including pottery workshops and stone tool manufacturing, implies some level of social differentiation and trade networks. Obsidian and jade artifacts found far from their source locations demonstrate long-distance exchange. Grave goods and ceremonial objects, such as dogu figurines, suggest spiritual beliefs and social hierarchies. Some dogu, humanoid clay figures with exaggerated features, are believed to have been used in fertility rites, healing ceremonies, or shamanistic practices. Spirituality and art. The spiritual life of the Jōmon people is glimpsed through their material culture. The abundance of figurines, ritual objects, and decorated pottery indicates a rich symbolic world. The exact beliefs remain speculative, but likely involved animism, the attribution of spiritual essence to natural objects and animals. Burial practices varied, with some interments accompanied by grave goods that highlight the importance of social identity and ancestor worship. Sacred sites, such as caves and mountain springs, were possibly places of ritual significance. Jōmon art is characterized by its intricate designs and motifs inspired by nature. From geometric patterns on pottery to carved stone pendants and necklaces, Artistic expression was integral to daily life and ritual. Key archaeological sites: Sanai, Maruyama, Aomori Prefecture. One of the largest Jōmon settlements, featuring pit houses, storage pits, and monumental wooden structures dating from 3900 to 2300 BCE. Oshikura, Niigata Prefecture. Site known for sophisticated pottery and stone tools. Torihama Shell Midden, Fukui Prefecture. Coastal site revealing diets rich in shellfish and fish. Chojibaru, Kyushu. Noted for early pottery and burial sites, transitioned towards the Yayoi period. By around 300 BCE, changes began to appear as new cultural elements arrived from the Asian mainland. These included wet rice agriculture, metalworking, and new social structures, marking the end of the Jōmon period and transition into the Yayoi. However, the Jōmon legacy endured in pottery styles, spiritual concepts, and aspects of local culture in northern and remote regions well into later periods. Yayoi period, c. 300 BC, 250 CE. The Yayoi period is one of the most pivotal in Japan's ancient history. It follows the Jōmon era and brings dramatic transformations, introducing new technologies, social structures, and cultural practices that laid the groundwork for early Japanese civilization. The name Yayoi comes from the Tokyo neighborhood, where characteristic pottery from this period was first discovered. Origins and migration. The Yayoi culture is widely believed to have emerged due to migrations and cultural diffusion from the Korean peninsula and possibly southern China. These migrants brought with them advanced technologies unknown in Jōmon Japan, such as wet rice agriculture, iron and bronze metallurgy, and new pottery styles. The transition was not uniform across Japan. The southern and western regions adopted Yayoi culture faster, while northern areas, especially Hokkaido and parts of Tohoku, retained Jōmon traditions longer. This cultural mosaic contributed to Japan's regional diversity. Agricultural revolution. Arguably, the most significant change was the introduction of wet rice paddy farming. Unlike the foraging and hunting lifestyle of the Jōmon, Yayoi communities began cultivating rice in irrigated fields. This shift transformed subsistence patterns and enabled the support of larger populations. Irrigation systems, levees, and canals were constructed to control water flow. The reliance on rice intensified social stratification, as surplus production allowed elites to accumulate wealth and power. The rice harvest also influenced social rituals and calendars, tightly binding agricultural cycles to religious ceremonies and governance. Metallurgy and technology. The Yayoi period saw the arrival of bronze and iron tools and weapons, marking a technological leap. Bronze was primarily used for ritual items like bells, dotaku, mirrors, and weapons such as swords and arrowheads. Iron, meanwhile, was utilized for farming tools, construction implements, and more effective weaponry. The use of metal allowed for improved agriculture, military capability, and craft specialization, all contributing to emerging complex societies. Pottery and craftsmanship. Yayoi pottery differs significantly from Jōmon ceramics. While Jōmon pottery was highly decorated and cord-marked, Yayoi pottery was simpler, more functional, and wheel-thrown. Vessels were often thin-walled with smoother surfaces designed for cooking and storage. Pottery styles varied regionally, reflecting local adaptations and interactions with continental cultures. Artisans also produced woven textiles and lacquerware, indicating rising craftsmanship. Social structure and settlement patterns. The Yayoi period saw the rise of hierarchical chiefdoms and complex social organizations. Settlements grew larger, sometimes fortified, often located near rice fields and waterways. Elite classes emerged, wielding control over land and resources. Burial mounds and grave goods demonstrate increasing social stratification. Large, moated villages and early proto-urban centers appeared, some housing hundreds of inhabitants. Some archaeological sites reveal evidence of warfare, fortifications, weapons caches, and skeletal trauma, suggesting conflict over resources and power. Political developments in the Yamato state. The late Yayoi period transitioned into the early Kofun era, but toward its end, the seeds of Japan's first centralized political power appeared. The Yamato clan, based in the Kinai region around present-day Nara and Osaka, began consolidating influence over rival clans. They adopted continental bureaucratic ideas and used imported technologies and writing systems to legitimize authority. The Yamato court claimed divine ancestry from the sun goddess Amaterasu, establishing ideological foundations for the imperial line. Religion and cultural practices. Shamanistic and animistic beliefs continued, often linked to agriculture and nature. Rituals to ensure good harvests, fertility, and protection from disasters were common. Bronze ritual items like dotaku bells are thought to have been used in ceremonies involving music and dance. Burial customs grew more elaborate, with grave goods indicating status and possibly early ancestor worship. Key archaeological sites. Itazuke site, Fukuoka Prefecture. One of the earliest Yayoi settlements showing evidence of rice paddies, pit dwellings, and bronze tools. Yoshinogari site, Saga Prefecture. A massive fortified settlement with moats, watchtowers, and thousands of artifacts. It represents a proto-urban center, illuminating social complexity. Toro site, Shizuoka Prefecture, famous for its well-preserved rice paddies, wooden buildings, and tools, giving direct evidence of Yayoi agriculture and village life. Kawachi site, Osaka Prefecture, important for its iron tools and weapons, suggesting the growth of warrior elites. Legacy of the Yayoi period. The Yayoi period's introduction of agriculture, metallurgy, and social hierarchy profoundly changed Japan's trajectory. It set the stage for the rise of early states, codified rituals, and cultural frameworks that continued into historic eras. While the transition displaced some Jōmon communities in northern and mountainous regions, Jōmon cultural elements persisted, blending with Yayoi influences over centuries. The period represents a crucial fusion of indigenous development and continental connections, which became hallmarks of Japan's early civilization. Kofun period, c. 250–538 CE. The Kofun period marks a monumental chapter in Japan's early state formation and political consolidation. Named after the large burial mounds, Kofun, constructed during this time, the era is characterized by the emergence of powerful elite clans, evolving social hierarchies, and intensified cultural exchange with continental Asia. Overview and historical context. Emerging around 250 CE, the Kofun period follows the Yayoi era's agrarian and social transformations. It overlaps the late Yayoi in some regions, but marks a distinct cultural and political phase marked by greater centralization and elite authority. During this time, Japan witnessed the establishment of proto-states, with the Yamato clan solidifying control over vast territories in the Kinai region, modern-day Nara, Osaka, and Kyoto areas. This clan laid the foundations for the imperial lineage that persists today. Kofun burial mounds, architecture and symbolism. The defining feature of the period is the construction of kofun, massive tombs built for elite rulers and nobility. These burial mounds come in various shapes, but are most famously recognized by their distinctive keyhole design. A round mound connected to a rectangular platform, often surrounded by moats. Sizes vary dramatically, from small mounds to colossal structures stretching over 400 meters long, dwarfing contemporary tombs elsewhere. The largest kofun is the Daisen Ryo Kofun, attributed to Emperor Nintoku, located in Osaka Prefecture. The scale and complexity of kofun construction reflect the immense power and resources controlled by the ruling elite. Labor mobilization for mound building indicates a sophisticated political organization capable of commanding large populations. Grave goods and rituals. Inside kofun, archaeologists have uncovered an array of grave goods that illuminate the social status, beliefs, and international contacts of the buried elite. Items include bronze, mirrors, often imported from China or made in Japan following Chinese styles, symbolizing authority and spiritual power. Iron weapons, swords, spears, and arrowheads, reflecting the warrior status of elites. Jewelry and ornaments, magatama, curved beads, beads made of jade, glass, and other precious materials. Hanawa figures, clay sculptures placed around burial mounds, depicting warriors, animals, houses, and ritual objects. They likely serve protective and ceremonial functions. These grave goods emphasize the merging of political power with religious and symbolic authority. Political consolidation in the Yamato court. The Kofun period witnesses the rise of the Yamato polity as the dominant power in Japan. Based in the Kinai region, the Yamato clan began exerting control over surrounding clans through alliances, warfare, and ritual. The Yamato rulers promoted the ideology of divine descent, claiming lineage from Amaterasu, the sun goddess, to legitimize their supremacy. Chinese historical texts such as the Weiji, Records of Wei, describe the Wa people, ancient Japanese, and mention the Yamato rulers, signaling increasing recognition from the Asian continent. Interaction with Korea and China. This period was marked by intensive cultural and political contact with the Korean kingdoms of Goguryeo, Baiche, and Silla, as well as with China's dynasties. The Yamato court adopted Chinese writing systems, kanji, administrative practices, and Buddhism's earliest introduction, though the latter would become more prominent later. Military campaigns and diplomacy with Korea influenced technology transfer, including metallurgy, ceramics, and governance models. Social hierarchy and organization. The society of the Kofun period was increasingly stratified. Powerful clans controlled land, labor, and military forces. The ruling elite lived in fortified palaces or hilltop residences, overseeing agricultural production and managing complex labor projects like Kofun construction. Commoners included farmers, artisans, and laborers, many likely bound by clan allegiances or servitude. Economy and technology. Agriculture continued to expand, supported by irrigation and rice cultivation. Metalworking advanced, with local production of iron tools and weapons complementing imports. Pottery production evolved, though utilitarian rather than highly decorative, with distinct regional styles. Craft specialization grew, with artisans producing bronze mirrors, jewelry, textiles, and Haniwa figures. Religion and beliefs. The Kofun period saw the deepening of ritual and religious practices centered on ancestor worship and nature spirits. The monumental tombs themselves are expressions of religious reverence and political power. Shinto practices likely began formalizing during this time, intertwining spiritual beliefs with political authority. Decline and transition. By the mid-6th century, Buddhism began to be introduced more widely, catalyzing cultural shifts that would culminate in the Asuka period. The Kofun period gradually transitioned into the early historic era, marked by written records and further state centralization. Key archaeological sites. Daisenryo Kofun, Osaka, largest known Kofun traditionally ascribed to Emperor Nintoku. Hashihaka Kofun, Nara, one of the earliest large keyhole tombs, possibly linked to early Yamato rulers. Makimuku site, Nara, archaeological evidence suggesting early Yamato court settlements. The Kofun period stands as a monumental era of Japan's ancient history, when powerful elites mobilized vast resources to build monumental tombs, establish political dominance, and lay foundations for the imperial state. Asuka period, 538–710 CE. The Asuka period represents a transformative era in early Japanese history, marking Japan's formal entry into recorded history, the introduction of Buddhism, and the foundations of a centralized state that would shape the nation's future. Historical context and timeline. The Asuka period is named after the Asuka region near modern Nara, where the imperial court resided during this era. It spans roughly from 538 CE, when Buddhism was officially introduced, to 710 CE, when the capital moved to Nara, initiating the Nara period. This era bridges the gap between Japan's proto-historic Kofun period and the fully historic classical periods. Introduction of Buddhism. Buddhism's introduction from the Korean kingdom of Baekje in 538 CE profoundly altered Japan's spiritual landscape. Initially met with resistance from conservative clans favoring indigenous Shinto beliefs, Buddhism gained strong advocates such as Prince Shotoku. Prince Shotoku, 574–622, regent and statesman, was instrumental in promoting Buddhism and Chinese-style governance. He authored the 17-article constitution, which emphasized harmony, meritocracy, and the emperor's divine authority. Buddhism introduced new art, architecture, and ideas about governance and morality, aligning with Confucian values and reshaping court culture. Political reforms and the Taika reforms. The mid-7th century saw sweeping political reforms known as the Taika reforms, starting in 645 CE. Modeled on Chinese Tang dynasty governance, these reforms aimed to centralize power under the emperor and break the dominance of powerful clans. Key aspects included nationalizing land and redistributing it to peasants under government control, establishing a merit-based bureaucracy, creating provinces and districts governed by officials appointed by the court, standardizing laws, taxation, and military conscription. Though not immediately fully effective, the reforms laid the groundwork for the Ritsurya system of codified laws and administration. Social and administrative developments. The period saw the emergence of an imperial court bureaucracy staffed by aristocrats educated in Confucian classics and Chinese administrative models. The Yamato rulers reinforced their claim as divinely appointed sovereigns, blending native mythology with Chinese political philosophy. Governance increasingly relied on written laws, census-taking, and codified taxation, moving Japan toward a centralized state. Art, culture, and architecture. Buddhist temples and sculptures began to appear, showcasing a fusion of Korean, Chinese, and native Japanese styles. Early temples such as Asukadera and Horyuji exemplify the period's architectural innovation. The importation of Chinese writing, kanji, allowed for the recording of history, laws, poetry, and religious texts. This ushered in the beginning of Japanese literature. Court life was refined, with elaborate rituals, music, and the early development of the Japanese calendar. Relations with Korea and China. Japan maintained diplomatic missions to China's Tang dynasty and Korea's kingdoms, facilitating cultural and technological exchange. Buddhist monks, artisans, scholars, and envoys traveled to and from the continent, bringing back knowledge that fueled reforms and innovation. Religious syncretism. While Buddhism gained official status, Shinto beliefs remained deeply rooted. The period saw the early blending of these traditions, which would evolve into the unique Japanese religious syncretism seen in later centuries. Key figures. Prince Shotoku, 574 to 622, regarded as a pioneering regent who championed Buddhism and Confucian governance. Empress Suiko, 592 to 628, the first reigning empress, under whose rule Buddhism gained official support. Soga clan, powerful pro-Buddhist aristocratic family that shaped early Asuka politics. Legacy of the Asuka period. The Asuka period laid the institutional and cultural foundations of Japan's classical state. Its reforms established centralized rule, bureaucratic governance, and a cultural orientation toward continental East Asia. Buddhism's arrival transformed religion, art, and philosophy, while the codification of law and administration initiated state formation processes that persisted for centuries. Nara period, 710 to 794 CE. The Nara period marks Japan's first era of a permanent capital and a fully codified imperial state. Named after the city of Nara, which served as the capital during this time, it is notable for the consolidation of centralized government, the flourishing of Buddhism, and the creation of Japan's earliest historical records. Establishment of the capital at Nara. In 710 CE, the imperial court established its capital at Heijō-kyo, present-day Nara, modeled after the Chinese Tang dynasty capital Chang'an. The city featured a grid layout with designated palace, administrative, and religious precincts. This permanent capital symbolized Japan's growing state sophistication and desire to emulate continental civilizations. Centralized government and the Ritsuryo system. The Ritsuryo system of governance, inspired by Chinese legal codes, was fully implemented during this period. It involved a centralized bureaucracy with appointed officials governing provinces and districts. The emperor was viewed as a divine ruler, and government offices were staffed by aristocrats trained in Confucian classics and Chinese administrative techniques. Land was officially owned by the state and allocated to farmers under a strict taxation regime. This system, though idealized, faced challenges such as corruption and land concentration. Buddhism's golden age. Buddhism reached new heights during the Nara period. The state actively sponsored the construction of grand temples and monasteries, such as Todaiji, housing the great Buddha Daibutsu, one of the largest bronze statues in the world. Buddhist clergy gained significant political influence, sometimes rivaling secular authorities. Buddhist teachings influenced art, architecture, literature, and education. Literary and historical achievements. Japan's earliest historical chronicles were compiled during the Nara period, including Kojiki, 712 CE, the records of ancient matters, combining mythology, legend, and early history to legitimize the imperial lineage. Nihon Shoki, 720 CE, the Chronicles of Japan, a more detailed and politically motivated history written in classical Chinese. These works shape Japanese identity, culture, and the narrative of divine imperial ancestry. Cultural developments. The adoption of Chinese writing, kanji, became widespread, facilitating administration, literature, and communication. Court culture included poetry, music, dance, and elaborate ceremonies. Craftsmen produced exquisite lacquerware, textiles, and Buddhist statuary. Foreign relations and influence. Japan maintained diplomatic missions to the Tang Dynasty and the Korean kingdoms, sending envoys and students to learn about governance, culture, and religion. Although contact with the continent waned toward the end of the period, the influence of Chinese models remained strong. Challenges and decline. Despite advances, the Nara government struggled with bureaucratic inefficiency, aristocratic factionalism, and landholding inequalities. The power of Buddhist institutions sometimes destabilized political authority. These tensions contributed to the eventual decision to relocate the capital to Heian, Kyoto, in 794, ushering in the Heian period. Heian period, 794 to 1185 CE. The Heian period is widely regarded as a golden age of classical Japanese culture, marked by the flourishing of arts, literature, refined court life, and the gradual emergence of a distinct Japanese identity separate from continental influences. Relocation to Heian Kyo. In 794 CE, Emperor Kanmu moved the capital from Nara to Heian Kyo, modern Kyoto, seeking to escape the political influence of powerful Buddhist monasteries in Nara and to establish a fresh center of imperial authority. Heian Kyo's design followed Chinese urban planning principles, but gradually evolved its own unique character over the centuries. Political structure and aristocracy. The Heian government maintained the Ritsuryo bureaucratic system, but over time, the central authority weakened as aristocratic families consolidated power through land ownership and political maneuvering. The Fujiwara clan, through strategic marriages and regencies, dominated court politics for much of the period, often controlling the emperor by acting as regents for child emperors. This aristocratic dominance created a court culture deeply focused on aesthetics, etiquette, poetry, and ceremony. Culture and literature. The Heian period witnessed the creation of some of Japan's most famous literary works, including The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, often considered the world's first novel, which intricately depicts court life, romance, and human psychology. The Pillow Book by Sei Shonagon, a collection of essays, observations, and anecdotes reflecting courtly life. These works reveal the refined tastes and social intricacies of the aristocracy. Poetry, waka, flourished, with imperial anthologies and private collections influencing culture and communication. Religion and philosophy. While Buddhism remained influential, particularly esoteric sects like Tendai and Shingon, Shinto practices also persisted. Syncretism between Buddhism and Shinto deepened, with kami worship often integrated into Buddhist rituals. The period saw the rise of monasteries with political power, though less dominant than in Nara. Decline of central authority. Despite cultural achievements, political power gradually decentralized. Provincial landowners, known as shogun holders, gained autonomy, exempting their lands from imperial taxation. Military families began to emerge as significant forces in local governance, setting the stage for future samurai dominance. Emergence of the samurai. The late Heian period witnessed the rise of the warrior class, initially serving aristocratic families as private armies. Conflicts such as the Hogan Rebellion, 1156, and the Heiji Rebellion, 1160, reflected growing tensions between aristocrats and military clans. The Genpei War, 1118 to 1185, a national conflict between the Taira and Minamoto clans, culminated in the establishment of the first shogunate. Kamakura period, 1185–1333 CE. The Kamakura period marks Japan's first era under military rule, as the samurai class rose to political dominance with the establishment of the Kamakura shogunate. This era reshaped Japanese governance, culture, and society, setting foundations for centuries of warrior-led rule. Establishment of the Kamakura shogunate. After the Genpei War, 1118–1185, Minamoto no Yoritomo emerged victorious, defeating the rival Taira clan and establishing military rule. In 1192, he was appointed Sei Taishogun, barbarian subduing generalissimo, by the emperor, formalizing the shogunate government based in Kamakura. This dual authority system separated the imperial court in Kyoto from the military government, with the shogun exercising real power. Political structure and governance. The Kamakura shogunate implemented a feudal military government, bakufu, characterized by a network of loyal samurai vassals granted lands in exchange for military service, the establishment of a council of elders, Hojo clan, who acted as regents controlling the shogunate after Yoritomo's death, a legal code governing samurai conduct and land disputes. The shogunate's administrative apparatus operated alongside the imperial court, though the latter's influence diminished significantly. Samurai, culture, and code. The samurai ethos, emphasizing loyalty, martial skill, and honor, developed during this time. While the formal code of Bushido was codified later, its foundations were laid in Kamakura values. Samurai were both warriors and administrators, responsible for managing lands and maintaining order. Military conflicts and defense. The Kamakura period was marked by significant military challenges. The Jokyu War, 1221, saw the shogunate defeat an attempt by the imperial court to regain power. The two Mongol invasions, 1274 and 1281, were major crises. The samurai successfully repelled these invasions, aided by typhoons called kamikaze, divine winds, which destroyed the Mongol fleets. These events enhanced the prestige of the samurai and the shogunate. Religion and cultural developments. Zen Buddhism gained popularity among the warrior class, emphasizing discipline, meditation, and simplicity. It influenced art, garden design, tea ceremony, and martial practices. Other Buddhist sects, such as Pure Land Buddhism, also flourished among commoners. Literature and art reflected samurai values and religious themes, with new genres emerging, including war tales, Gunki Monogatari, like the Heike Monogatari, recounting the Genpei War. Economy and society. Agriculture remained the economic base, with land ownership fragmented among samurai and local lords. Trade increased, especially with China, bringing new technologies and goods. Peasantry bore much of the tax burden, while towns and markets began to develop slowly. Decline and fall. By the early 14th century, the Kamakura shogunate faced internal strife, economic difficulties, and challenges from rival clans. The Meiji Restoration, 1333, briefly returned power to the emperor but was short-lived, leading to the rise of the Ashikaga shogunate and the Muromachi period. Muromachi period, 1336 to 1573 CE. The Muromachi period, also known as the Ashikaga period, follows the Kamakura era and is marked by the establishment of the Ashikaga shogunate. It was a time of political fragmentation, cultural flourishing, and social upheaval that deeply shaped medieval Japan. Establishment of the Ashikaga shogunate. Following the fall of the Kamakura shogunate and the brief Meiji Restoration, Ashikaga Takauji seized power in 1336, founding the Ashikaga shogunate with its seat in the Muromachi district of Kyoto. Unlike the Kamakura regime, the Ashikaga shogunate had less centralized control, leading to greater autonomy among regional warlords or daimyo. Political fragmentation and the rise of daimyo. The Ashikaga period witnessed a decline in central authority and the rise of feudal lords who governed their territories independently. The weakening of shogunal power culminated in the Onen War, 1467 to 1477, a devastating civil conflict that triggered the Sengoku Warring States period, characterized by nearly constant warfare among rival daimyo. Culture and the arts. Despite political instability, the Muromachi period saw a remarkable cultural renaissance. The development of Zen Buddhism profoundly influenced aesthetics, emphasizing simplicity, asymmetry, and naturalness. Arts such as ink painting, sumi-e, tea ceremony, chanoyu, no theater, and gardening reached new heights. The construction of iconic gardens like the Ryoanji Rock Garden in Kyoto exemplifies Zen aesthetics. The patronage of the Ashikaga shoguns supported artists and cultural institutions. Economy and trade. Economic activity expanded despite warfare, with urban centers growing and commerce flourishing. Trade with Ming China and Korea brought luxury goods and introduced new technologies such as firearms, which played a significant role in later conflicts. The rise of merchant classes in castle towns began altering social structures. Social changes. The breakdown of centralized control led to social mobility for some, as skilled warriors and merchants gained prominence. However, peasants and lower classes often suffered during prolonged conflicts. The arrival of Europeans and Christianity. The late Muromachi period saw the arrival of Portuguese traders and missionaries in the mid-16th century. This introduction brought firearms, new trade opportunities, and the first Christian converts, impacting politics and society. Transition to the Azuchi Momoyama period. The Sengoku period's chaos began to be resolved by powerful daimyo such as Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who sought to unify Japan. Their efforts led to the establishment of a centralized state, ending the Muromachi period in 1573. Azuchi Momoyama period, 1573 to 1603. The Azuchi Momoyama period is a brief but pivotal era in Japanese history, marking the final stages of the country's unification after centuries of civil war. Named after the castles of Oda Nobunaga and Toyotomi Hideyoshi, this period saw significant political consolidation and the first substantial contacts with Europeans. Political unification and key figures. The era began with Oda Nobunaga's campaigns to subdue rival daimyo and break the power of militant Buddhist temples. Nobunaga was a ruthless and innovative leader who employed firearms and tactical brilliance. Following Nobunaga's death in 1582, Toyotomi Hideyoshi continued the unification effort, consolidating power over Japan through military conquest and strategic alliances. Hideyoshi also implemented land surveys and rigid social policies to stabilize control. Castle architecture and urban development. This period is famous for its grandiose castles, which symbolize power and modernity. Nobunaga's Azuchi Castle featured massive stone walls, lavish decoration, and innovative defensive designs. Oda urban centers grew around castles, becoming hubs of political and economic activity. The castle towns laid foundations for Japan's future urbanization. Cultural flourishing. The Azuchi Momoyama period witnessed a cultural boom, especially in the arts connected to the warrior elite and tea ceremony. The tea master Sen no Rikyu refined the tea ceremony, chanoyu, emphasizing simplicity and spiritual depth, which deeply influenced Japanese aesthetics. No theater and painting continued to flourish, while new styles such as Momoyama painting, characterized by bold colors and gold leaf, emerged. Foreign contact and Christianity. European contact intensified, with Portuguese and Spanish missionaries spreading Christianity. The Jesuit mission led to a notable number of Japanese converts. Trade with Europeans introduced firearms, new technologies, and luxury goods, altering warfare and culture. Social and economic policies. Hideyoshi implemented strict social order laws, including the sword hunt, which disarmed peasants and reinforced samurai privileges. He also attempted invasions of Korea, 1592 to 1598, which ultimately failed but demonstrated Japan's expanding ambitions. Legacy. Though brief, the Azuchi Momoyama period set the stage for the Tokugawa shogunate's long peace and centralized rule. It combined military innovation, cultural flowering, and political consolidation. Edo period 1603 to 1868 CE. The Edo period, also known as the Tokugawa period, represents over 2.5 centuries of relative peace, political stability, and cultural development under the Tokugawa shogunate. It was an era defined by strict social order, isolationist policies, economic growth, and flourishing arts. Establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate. In 1603, Tokugawa Ieyasu established the shogunate after his decisive victory at the Battle of Sekigahara, 1600, consolidating power over Japan. The shogunate was based in Edo, modern Tokyo, and instituted a rigid feudal system controlling daimyo, feudal lords, samurai, peasants, artisans, and merchants. Political structure and control. The Tokugawa regime maintained order through policies like the Sankin Kotai, requiring daimyo to alternate residence between their domains in Edo, effectively controlling their power. A strict caste system was enforced. Samurai, the ruling military class; farmers, valued for producing rice; artisans, craftsmen and producers; merchants, lowest social class despite economic influence. Isolation and foreign policy. Tokugawa Japan adopted the Sakoku, closed country, policy severely restricting foreign contact and trade, mainly limiting it to the Dutch and Chinese at Nagasaki. Christianity was banned and missionaries expelled, fearing foreign influence and rebellion. Economy and urbanization. Agriculture flourished with improvements in irrigation and crop yields. Rice became the currency of wealth and tax. Urban centers like Edo, Osaka, and Kyoto grew dramatically, with Edo becoming one of the world's largest cities. A merchant class prospered, and a vibrant urban culture emerged despite social restriction. Culture and the arts. The Edo period saw the development of uniquely Japanese cultural forms. Kabuki and bunraku theater captivated audiences. Ukiyo-e woodblock prints depicted city life, landscapes, and famous actors. Haiku poetry flourished with masters like Matsuo Basho. The tea ceremony, ikebana, flower arranging, and martial arts were refined. Education and philosophy. Neo-Confucianism became the official ideology, promoting loyalty, hierarchy, and social harmony. Terrakoya, temple schools, expanded education among commoners, increasing literacy. Challenges and decline. By the 19th century, internal economic problems, social unrest, and external pressure from Western powers challenged Tokugawa rule. The arrival of Commodore Perry's black ships in 1853 forced the opening of Japan, exposing the shogunate's weaknesses. End of the Edo period. The political turmoil culminated in the Meiji Restoration, 1868, restoring imperial rule and ushering Japan into the modern era. Meiji period, 1868 to 1912 CE. The Meiji period marks one of the most transformative eras in Japanese history. Following centuries of isolation under the Tokugawa shogunate, the Meiji Restoration restored imperial power and launched a rapid campaign of modernization, industrialization, and westernization, reshaping Japan into a major world power. Restoration of imperial rule. In 1868, the Tokugawa shogunate was overthrown in a political revolution known as the Meiji Restoration. The emperor was restored to supreme authority, symbolizing Japan's break with feudalism and opening a new era. The young Emperor Meiji, supported by reformist leaders, sought to strengthen Japan to resist Western imperialism. Political and social reforms. The new government abolished the feudal domain system, replacing it with a prefectural system governed centrally from Tokyo. The samurai class was dismantled, their privileges revoked, including the right to carry swords. Conscription introduced a modern national army, shifting power from samurai to the state. The Meiji Constitution, 1889, established a constitutional monarchy with a bicameral parliament, balancing imperial authority with modern governance. Economic modernization and industrialization. Japan pursued aggressive industrialization. Infrastructure projects included railways, telegraph lines, and ports. The government supported heavy industries such as steel, shipbuilding, and textiles. Zaibatsu, powerful industrial conglomerates emerged, dominating the economy. Agricultural reforms increased productivity, feeding the growing urban population. Education and culture. A universal education system was established, promoting literacy, science, and Western knowledge. Western-style clothing, architecture, and customs became common among elites. Culturally, Japan balanced modernization with efforts to preserve traditional arts and values. Military expansion and foreign policy. Japan rapidly built a modern military modeled after Western powers. Victories in the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894-1895, and Russo-Japanese War, 1904-1905, showcased Japan's new strength, marking it as a rising imperial power. Colonial acquisitions included Taiwan, Korea, formally annexed in 1910, and parts of Manchuria. Society and challenges. Rapid urbanization and industrialization created social tensions, labor unrest, and disparities. The government promoted nationalism and emperor worship to unify the populace. Legacy of the Meiji period. The Meiji era set Japan on a path of modernization unmatched in non-Western countries, blending Western technology and institutions with Japanese culture. It transformed Japan from a feudal society into a modern industrialized nation, poised to play a major role on the global stage. Taisho period, 1912-1926 CE. The Taisho period was a time of political liberalization, cultural change, and social modernization in Japan. Though brief, it marked the transition from Meiji-era modernization to more democratic and international engagement, set against the backdrop of growing social tensions. Political developments. Following Emperor Meiji's death in 1912, Emperor Taisho ascended to the throne. His reign saw the rise of Taisho democracy, characterized by increased political participation, party politics, and parliamentary government. Universal male suffrage was introduced in 1925, expanding the electorate and empowering new political voices. Despite this, the military and bureaucratic elites maintained considerable influence. Social and cultural changes. Urbanization accelerated, and Japan's cities became centers of modern life, culture, and consumerism. Western fashions, jazz music, cinema, and new literature influenced the youth and urban middle class. The moga, modern girls, emerged, challenging traditional gender roles with new freedoms and lifestyles. Economic growth and challenges. Japan's economy benefited from World War I, supplying goods to allies, which boosted industrial output. However, post-war recessions, labor unrest, and the 1923 Great Kanto earthquake posed significant challenges. Economic inequality and rural poverty persisted, fueling political radicalism and labor movements. International relations. Japan expanded its influence abroad, joining the League of Nations and gaining former German territories in the Pacific after World War I. At the Washington Naval Conference 1921-1922, Japan agreed to naval limitations but sought parity with Western powers. Intellectual and artistic movements. The Taisho period fostered vibrant intellectual debate, including socialism, liberalism, and nationalism. Literature and arts reflected experimentation, with movements like proletarian literature and avant-garde art gaining ground. Legacy and transition. The era ended with Emperor Taisho's declining health, leading to the ascension of Emperor Showa, Hirohito, in 1926. Political liberalism faced backlash as militarism and nationalism grew, setting the stage for the turbulent decades ahead. Showa period pre-war and World War II era, 1926 to 1945. The early Showa period was marked by dramatic shifts in Japan's political, social, and military landscape. Initial political liberalism gave way to rising militarism, expansionism, and ultimately, devastating global conflict. Political turmoil and rise of militarism. Emperor Showa Hirohito ascended the throne in 1926 during a time of political experimentation and social change. However, economic instability caused by the Great Depression severely affected Japan. Military leaders increasingly influenced government, promoting aggressive nationalism and the idea of Japan's divine destiny to lead Asia. Expansionism and conflicts in Asia. Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931 marked the start of aggressive territorial expansion. The establishment of the puppet state Manchukuo escalated tensions with China and Western powers. The Second Sino-Japanese War, 1937-1945, saw widespread atrocities including the Nanjing Massacre and significant military engagement across China. Japan also expanded into Southeast Asia and the Pacific, seeking resources and strategic advantage. Domestic policies and society. The government tightened control over society, censoring media, suppressing dissent, and promoting militarist propaganda. Civil liberties were curtailed, and the population was mobilized for total war through conscription, labor demands, and rationing. World War II and Pacific War. Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 brought the United States and its allies into war. Initial Japanese successes across Southeast Asia and the Pacific were followed by a gradual Allied counteroffensive. Intense battles such as Midway, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa devastated Japanese forces and civilians. The end of the war and consequences. In August 1945, after atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the Soviet declaration of war, Japan surrendered unconditionally. The war left the country devastated, with millions dead, cities destroyed, and the economy in ruins. Post-war Showa period, 1945-1989. Following Japan's defeat in World War II, the country underwent profound transformations politically, economically, and socially. The post-war Showa era witnessed Japan's recovery, democratization, and emergence as a global economic powerhouse. Allied occupation and reforms, 1945-1952. After Japan's surrender in 1945, Allied forces led by General Douglas MacArthur occupied Japan. The occupation aimed to demilitarize and democratize the country. Key reforms included the 1947 Constitution, which established a parliamentary democracy and renounced war in Article 9. Land reforms redistributing farmland from landlords to tenant farmers. The dismantling of zaibatsu conglomerates to decentralize economic power. Expansion of civil liberties, women's suffrage, and labor rights. Emperor Hirohito remained as a symbolic figurehead, legitimizing the new democratic government. Economic miracle and industrial growth. Japan's economy rebounded rapidly through rebuilding infrastructure destroyed during the war, focusing on manufacturing, technology, and exports. Government-industry cooperation promoting strategic sectors like automobiles and electronics. The Korean War, 1950 to 1953, which boosted demand for Japanese goods. By the 1960s and 1970s, Japan became the world's second-largest economy, renowned for quality manufacturing and innovation. Society and culture. Rapid urbanization and rising incomes transformed Japanese society. Education expanded, and consumer culture flourished with new goods and entertainment. Traditional culture coexisted with modernization, visible in architecture, arts, and social customs. Political stability and international relations. The Liberal Democratic Party dominated politics, maintaining pro-Western policies and close U.S. alliances. Japan played an active role in international organizations and promoted economic diplomacy. Challenges in the 1980s. The 1980s saw asset bubbles in real estate and stocks, leading to economic imbalances. Demographic shifts, including aging population and low birth rates, began to emerge as concerns. Legacy. The post-war Showa period set the foundation for contemporary Japan, marked by peace, prosperity, and global integration. Heisei period, 1989 to 2019. The Heisei period is characterized by significant social, economic, and political changes as Japan navigated the aftermath of its economic bubble burst and adapted to a rapidly changing global environment. Economic challenges and the lost decade. The early Heisei era began with the collapse of Japan's asset price bubble in 1991. The ensuing economic stagnation, known as the lost decade, lasted through the 1990s and beyond. Deflation, banking crises, and slow growth hampered recovery. The government implemented various stimulus packages, but structural issues remained. Demographic shifts: Japan faced an aging population and declining birth rates, leading to labor shortages and increased social welfare demands. Efforts to address these challenges included debates over immigration policy and increasing female workforce participation. Political landscape: the long-dominant Liberal Democratic Party faced challenges from opposition parties, leading to brief changes in government. Reforms aimed at deregulation and decentralization were pursued, though political gridlock often impeded progress. Natural disasters: in 2011, Japan experienced a devastating triple disaster: a magnitude 9.0 earthquake off the coast of Tohoku, a massive tsunami causing widespread destruction, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster, leading to nuclear crises and evacuations. The event profoundly impacted energy policy, disaster preparedness, and public trust. Technological and cultural developments: Japan remained a global leader in technology, automotive industries, and popular culture, including anime, manga, and video games. The country also embraced globalization while grappling with preserving traditional culture. International relations: Japan deepened its security alliance with the United States and engaged actively in regional diplomacy. Economic partnerships and participation in global organizations continued to shape its foreign policy. The Heisei period reflects Japan's resilience and adaptability amid economic, social, and environmental challenges, positioning it for future transformation. Reiwa period, 2019 to present. The Reiwa period marks the current era of Japan's history, beginning with Emperor Naruhito's ascension to the throne in May 2019. This era continues Japan's ongoing journey of balancing tradition with modernity amid complex global and domestic challenges. Imperial transition in symbolism. Emperor Naruhito became the 126th emperor following the unprecedented abdication of his father, Emperor Akihito, marking the first imperial abdication in over 2 centuries. The era name Reiwa means beautiful harmony, symbolizing hopes for peace and cultural prosperity. Domestic challenges and policy. Japan continues to face demographic issues, including an aging population and declining birth rate, pressuring social services and the labor market. Efforts to revitalize the economy include promoting innovation, digital transformation, and expanding women's workforce participation. The government also addresses environmental concerns, pursuing carbon neutrality goals and disaster resilience. COVID-19 pandemic impact. The global COVID-19 pandemic profoundly affected Japan's society, economy, and healthcare system. The pandemic delayed the Tokyo 2020 Summer Olympics by 1 year, which were eventually held in 2021 without spectators, symbolizing resilience amid crisis. Technological innovation and economy. Japan remains a leader in technology sectors such as robotics, electronics, and green energy. Efforts to integrate AI, 5G, and digital infrastructure are ongoing to boost productivity and global competitiveness. Foreign relations and security. Japan navigates complex geopolitical dynamics, including US-China rivalry, regional security concerns, and evolving alliances. It continues to engage actively in multilateral organizations and promote free trade agreements. Cultural continuity and change. Japanese culture continues to influence the world through popular media, cuisine, fashion, and traditional arts. At the same time, societal debates around immigration, gender roles, and work-life balance reflect evolving values. Outlook and legacy. The Reiwa period represents a time of cautious optimism and adaptation as Japan seeks sustainable growth, social harmony, and global engagement in a rapidly changing world. Japan's journey is a testament to adaptation, endurance, and cultural depth. From ancient rituals to cutting-edge innovation, it has faced war, peace, isolation, and globalization, emerging each time with renewed identity. The story of Japan is far from over, and its past continues to illuminate its future.